Chapter 291. Ling Feng looked at his father like that, trembling all over with fright, but nodded anyway. Beast, I asked you to reflect at home, but you still don't want to repent, I'll beat you to death. Ling Zhenchuan said. He picked up the stool and smashed it on Ling Feng's body. The stool shattered. David was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Ling Zhenchuan to be so cruel to his son, which made him a little bit at a loss for what to say. Lao Ling, stop now, you're going to beat your son to death. Wang Wei tried her best to stop Ling Zhenchuan. But where did Ling Zhenchuan listen to him? He slapped Ling Feng in the face, and Ling Feng was screaming and howling. Mr. Chen, I will explain this to you. In addition to the Wei family's affairs, I will find a way to block it for Mr. Chen. Ling Zhenchuan looked at David. I'll handle the matter of the Wei family myself, so Mayor Ling doesn't have to worry about it. David glanced at Ling Feng, who was beaten horribly, and continued, Young Master Ling, just teach him a lesson and let him raise your memory. David's murderous aura was rising, but when he saw Ling Zhenchuan like this, his anger disappeared a lot. It can only be said that this Ling Feng really has good parents. Leaving from Ling Zhenchuan's house, David rushed back to Su's house again. Sonia must have needed more comfort when faced with such a thing. On the other side of Horrendal Hospital, at night, the Wei family got the news that Wei Kunan, the head of the Wei family, came with 10 Wei family masters in person. These 10 people are all dressed in strong suits, and their temples are bulging. At first glance, they are masters of masters. Looking at his son on the hospital bed, Wei Kunan's face was extremely ugly. In a small Horrendal, there were still people who dared to do something to his son. Dad, you're finally here, I'm dead, my legs are dead, and I can't connect anymore. Seeing Wei Kunan coming, Wei Dao burst into tears. Don't FC you king cry, give me something to do. Wei Kunan gave Wei Dao a stern look. You even tie up the girls of the Su family, do you think you are invincible in the world? After seeing Wei Kunan, he already knew the ins and outs of the matter. Wei Dao was reprimanded, so scared that he didn't dare to speak, and after Wei Kunan finished reprimanding, a hint of distress flashed in his eyes. He is just such a son, and he usually holds it in the palm of his hand. How could he have suffered such a crime? Go get the director of this hospital. Wei Kunan said to one of his subordinates. Soon, the doctor walked in with a doctor wearing glasses and a white coat. This person was the hospital director. You are the dean? Wei Kunan asked coldly. Mr. Wei, I am the dean. The dean said with trembling legs in fright. How's my son's leg? Mr. Wei, young Master Wei's leg was smashed by external force, and the entire calf bone was smashed. There is no way to connect it. In the future, I can only rely on crutches. The dean explained carefully. Trash. Wei Kunan gave the dean a slap in the face. I don't care what method you use to heal my son's leg, or I will kill your whole family. PFFT. The dean knelt on the ground and begged bitterly, Mr. Wei, there is really nothing we can do in our hospital, you can let young Master Wei go to a big hospital, or go abroad, maybe there will be a way, even if you kill me, there's no way. Wei Kunan looked at the dean and knew that the hospital really had no choice, so instead of embarrassing the dean, he ordered his servants, go prepare the car and send the young master back to the provincial capital for treatment. Soon, Wei Dao was sent away, and Wei Kunan looked at the night scene of Horrendal. His eyes were full of indifference. If you dare to abolish my son's leg, then I will let the whole Horrendal be buried with you. Chapter 292. In the Su family villa, David has been here with Sonia for a long time. Sonia's mental state is very good, but every time she thinks of the moment when David killed Jordan, she still has lingering fears. During dinner, David also stayed at Su's house to eat. While a few people were eating, a servant hurried in and whispered a few words in Reuben's ear. Reuben's face changed, and the whole person instantly became gloomy. Dad, what's the matter? Sonia asked suspiciously. It's okay, there is something in the company, I'll deal with it, you can continue to eat. Reuben got up, and then said to David, David, you can stay here tonight, I don't know what time you will be back, you take a good look at Sonia. Dad. Sonia blushed instantly. Uncle, you go, I will take good care of Sonia. David nodded. After Reuben walked out the door, a burst of chills broke out on his body. Gather all the bodyguards of the Su family and follow me. More than 20 bodyguards followed Reuben to the Regal Hotel. At this time, in a luxurious private room of the Regal Hotel, Wei Kunan was sitting in it, drinking tea and waiting quietly. And outside the private room of the hotel, there are security guards lying all over the place. These are Wei Kunan's masterpieces. When Reuben arrived at the hotel, looking at the wailing security guards, his anger grew even stronger. Mr. Wei, you are a guest from afar. If your subordinates don't take good care of them, you can tell me, you don't have to do anything. Ruben pushed open the door and walked into the private room, looking at Wei Kunin with a cold expression. Do it. Wei Kunin smiled coldly. I didn't kill them, it's already a face for you. My son's leg is broken, you must know. Now you hand over the guy who broke my son's leg. I can spare your Su family is dead. Ruben's eyes froze. Your son kidnapped my daughter. I just abolished his leg. It's already considered light. This is Horrendal, not the provincial capital. I hope you can understand. Ruben has already made up his mind to take everything on his own and not let David join in. The power of the Wei family, Ruben is very clear. If David is targeted by the Wei family, then it will definitely not end well in the future. Ha ha ha, what if it's Horrendal here? If I crush you to death, it's like crushing a bedbug. Wei Kunin laughed loudly, stood up suddenly and said, don't think I don't know who did it. I'm giving you a chance now. If you don't take it, don't blame me for being rude. I said, your son kidnapped my daughter, and it's considered light to lose his leg. If you want revenge, you can come at me. Ruben gritted his teeth, already planning to go all out. Okay. Wei Kunin's eyes narrowed. Since you are courting death, then I will fulfill you. As soon as Wei Kunin's words landed, 10 of his masters rushed up in an instant. The more than 20 bodyguards brought by Ruben also acted together, and they had an absolute advantage in numbers. However, after just a few minutes, the more than 20 bodyguards of the Su family all fell to the ground, wailing in pain, not a single one. Those who were able to stand, but looking at the people Wei Kunin brought, not a single one was injured. This gap in strength is too great, like an adult beating a 4 or 5-year-old child, there is no pressure at all. Ruben's face became extremely ugly, and his body was shaking slightly, but Ruben still stood still, did not run. I'll ask you again now, hand over the guy who broke my leg. Wei Kunin looked at Ruben with a deep disdain on his face and said, I broke your son's leg. If you want revenge, come at me. Now you can kill me. Ruben was heartbroken, since he chose to come alone and didn't let David follow, he didn't plan to let David come forward. Chapter 293. Don't think I dare not kill you. Wei Kunin frowned, holding a sharp dagger in his hand and directly touching Ruben's neck. Feeling the coolness of the dagger, Ruben's legs began to tremble. No one is not afraid of death. At this time, Ruben was also afraid, but he couldn't hand over David. Mr. Wei, why did you come all the way to Horrendal without notifying the old man, so I can take care of Mr. Wei? Just when Wei Kunin held the dagger against Ruben's neck, a hearty voice suddenly came, and Ji Wenshan hurried over. Ji Wenshan looked at the wailing Su family bodyguards on the ground, looked at the dagger in Wei Kunin's hand, and said with a faint smile, Mr. Wei, this guy just came to Horrendal and used a knife and a gun, what's the matter, we can sit down. Talk. Before Ji Wenshan went up, he brought the dagger in Wei Kunin's hand. Ji Wenshan used to be an official in the provincial capital, so he had some friendship with Wei Kunin, but now that he has retired, his influence is much smaller. However, Wei Kunin also gave Ji Wenshan a face and took his seat again. Mr. Su, sit down too, we have something to talk about. Ji Wenshan, in front of the peacemaker, asked Ruben to sit down too. Ruben nodded and sat down as Ji Wenshan said. Ji Wenshan was notified by phone on the road from Ruben. Ruben knew that with the strength of the Su family, he would definitely not be able to fight against the Wei family, so he specially notified Ji Wenshan to come over and mediate. If you can spend money to solve it without fighting and killing, that would be great, and Ruben didn't want to die. Mr. Wei, I have also heard about the matter. In fact, this matter makes the young master somewhat inappropriate. Now that the matter has come out, let's discuss a solution. I think it is better to let President Su set a table and be in public. Apologize to you, and make some compensation to President Wei, as you said, as long as the Su family can bear it, I believe that President Su will not refuse. After sitting down, Ji Wenshan followed Wei Kunin with a smile on his face. Ji, do you think my Wei family is short of money? Wei Kunin raised the corner of his mouth. This, Ji Wenshan was choked all of a sudden, his face flashed a little embarrassment, but he quickly continued to laugh. The Wei family has a lot of money, of course it's not bad. President Wei, tell me, this matter needs to be done. What can I do to make you happy? Hand over the person who ruined my son's legs, and Sonia went to take care of my son. It was because of her that my son became like this. Wei Kunin looked at Ruben coldly, and the request was very excessive. It seemed that he was deliberately angering that Ruben. Sure enough, after listening to Wei Kunin's request, Ruben slammed the table and said, Impossible, your son kidnapped my daughter, and now you want my daughter to take care of him. Stop dreaming, if you have the ability, you can kill it now. Me. You think I don't dare? As soon as Wei Kunin finished speaking, the 10 experts from the Wei family immediately surrounded Ruben. Mr. Wei, don't be impatient, give the old man a thin face, we. Calling you old, even if it's to give you face, you can't take care of this matter, you can't take care of it, don't force me to do something to you. Before Ji Wenshin could finish speaking, Wei Kunin said coldly. This time, Ji Wenshin looked embarrassed, his whole body was trembling with anger, his face flushed red, but he couldn't do anything. He has retired now. As the saying goes, people take tea to cool, and they have no influence in the provincial capital. To know the strength of the Wei family in the provincial capital, even when Ji Wenshin was in power, Wei Kunin really wanted to get angry. Not to mention Ji Wenshin's face, not to mention that he has retired now, so Wei Kunin doesn't need to give him face. Chapter 294. Just when Ji Wenshin was helpless and the atmosphere at the scene was tense, suddenly the private room door was pushed open again, and a middle-aged man in a suit walked in. This person is Ling Zhenchuan, the leader of Horrendal. After he got Wei Kunin to Horrendal, he rushed over immediately. Wei Kunin, this is Horrendal, not the provincial capital. You just hurt people on my site. Are you not taking me seriously? Ling Zhenchuan looked at the Su family bodyguards on the ground and asked with a cold face. The arrival of Ling Zhenchuan made Wei Kunin a little surprised. He did not expect that a Su family would be able to alert the leader of Ling Zhenchuan. Although the Su family was the richest man in Horrendal, they did not have the strength to make the city leader come forward. He didn't know that Ling Zhenchuan came not for the Su family, but for David. Mayor Ling, I hope you don't interfere in this matter, be your mayor well, and we won't break the river. Wei Kunin was a little surprised that Ling Zhenchuan came, but he was not afraid of Ling Zhenchuan, a small mayor of Horrendal. Wei Kunin did not take it seriously. When he was in the provincial capital, the officials who accompanied Wei Kunin to eat and drink were no better than Ling Zhenchuan. High position. This is my place, and I have the responsibility to protect the safety of the people in Horrendal. If you hurt someone here, I can send someone to arrest you immediately. If you don't want to make things worse, you can leave with your people. I'll just pretend it didn't happen. Ling Zhenchuan was very angry with Wei Kunin's attitude. Ha ha ha, what a joke. Wei Kunin burst out laughing. I'm sitting here, you can ask someone to arrest me, if you don't obediently send me out, I Wei Kunin will do whatever you want. Surname. Wei Kunin did not have the slightest respect for Ling Zhenchuan. Because of the establishment of a branch in Horrendal, Ling Zhenchuan always obstructed the establishment of the Wei family in Horrendal. This has made Wei Kunin very dissatisfied. How is it possible now? Give Ling Zhenchuan face. You, Ling Zhenchuan blushed and gritted his teeth angrily. Be your mayor and benefit your people in Horrendal. Don't worry about this, otherwise, I'm afraid your black hat will not be guaranteed. Wei Kunin was extremely arrogant. The Su family, the richest man in Horrendal, the city's top leader Ling Zhenchuan, and Ji Wenshin were all here. The atmosphere condensed again, no one spoke, and the whole private room was full of chills. Dong dong dong. Suddenly, there was a clutter of footsteps, and Lin Tianyu rushed into the private room with dozens of people. Seeing that Reuben was surrounded by 10 experts of the Wei family, Lin Tianyu's face turned cold, and he led dozens of people to confront the masters of the Wei family. Get up and protect Reuben behind you. Reuben is now David's half-old husband, and Lin Tianyu dare not let Reuben make mistakes. Seeing that Lin Tianyu had brought people here, Wei Kunin was not surprised, but laughed ha ha ha, ha ha ha, it's getting more and more interesting, even the underground emperor of Horrendal, Lin Tianyu, has come, and the few people here today are probably Horrendal's biggest lineup, right? Wei Kunin, a strong dragon can't overwhelm the local snakes, even if you are Guo Zhonglong, if you dare to make trouble in Horrendal, I will make you come and go. Lin Tianyu glared at Wei Kunin with no fear in his eyes. After taking the Julidan, Lin Tianyu's strength improved, which made him much more courageous, especially following David's time and seeing David's strength, he was even more fearless. If this was left in the past, it would give Lin Tianyu some courage, and he would not dare to talk like this with Wei Kunin, the head of the Wei family, the two of them would not be of the same order of magnitude at all. Chapter 295. Wei Kunin was stunned for a moment, he didn't expect Lin Tianyu to dare to speak to him in such a tone, and then his face turned cold. You are Lin Tianyu, you are also worthy of a local snake, in my eyes, you are nothing but an earthworm. After Wei Kunin finished speaking, he slapped his palm on the table, and the hard table instantly shattered. This time, everyone's expressions changed slightly, and Lin Tianyu even frowned. He didn't expect this Wei Kunin to have such a perverted strength. Today I must take away the murderer who broke my leg. Now I will give you 5 minutes to think about it, either hand over someone or die. When the word, dead, came out, the temperature in the entire private room suddenly dropped, causing Reuben and the others to shudder. Mr. Su, I have informed Mr. Chen. If Mr. Chen is not there in a while, if Wei Kunin makes a move, you will run first. I will try to stop me with someone, and my people will be assembled soon. Lin Tianyu whispered to Reuben. When Reuben heard that Lin Tianyu had actually notified David, he suddenly looked helpless. David is here, isn't it a death sentence? It seems that Wei Kunin won't kill anyone, so he won't give up today. President Su, don't worry. Lin Tianyu comforted, he had absolute confidence in David. On the other side, David, who was eating, suddenly received a message from Lin Tianyu. When David saw the content of the message, his whole body burst out with murderous aura. David, what's wrong with you? Sonia seemed to sense the murderous aura in David and asked carefully. I'm fine, you eat first. David got up, grabbed his coat and put it on his body, and then said to the servants of the Su family, take care of Miss, don't let her go out. I know, uncle. The servant of the Su family said respectfully. David was stunned for a moment, glanced at the respectful servant of the Su family, and suddenly smiled helplessly. He and Sonia have never formally established a relationship, and they have always been tacit, but in the eyes of the Su family, they have already regarded him as Sonia's boyfriend, which is a matter of course. Wait back, treat you well. David patted the man on the shoulder and left after speaking. I felt very comfortable when my uncle called David. The time is up, what do you think? Is it to make friends, or to die? Wei Kunin looked at Reuben coldly and asked. After the 10 masters of the Wei family finished speaking in Wei Kunin, they immediately took a stance. Facing Lin Tianyu's dozens of people, they were not afraid at all. In the eyes of these people, the people that Lin Tianyu brought were nothing more than rascals who could easily be trampled to death. Wei Kunin, I don't know how to make friends. Reuben's eyes were firm. Well, since you don't make friends, then go to die. Wei Kunin's face turned cold. Do it. After the 10 masters of the Wei family received the order, they rushed towards Lin Tianyu and the others like tigers descending the mountain. Your son is my waist, come to me if you have the ability. Just then, David walked in. David. Seeing David coming, Reuben's face showed concern. Uncle, don't worry, I'll be fine. David looked at Reuben with gratitude. He didn't expect that Reuben would fight this old life for him. Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen. Ling Zhenchuan and Ji Yu Wenshan greeted David politely when they saw David coming. Mayor Ling, Ji Yu, thank you for your help. David said gratefully. Ling Zhenchuan and Ji Yu Wenshan immediately said with embarrassment, we didn't help anything, they don't give us face. I'll handle this matter myself, it's too late, Mayor Ling, Ji Yu, you should go back and rest. David smiled lightly. Chapter 296. That old man will leave. Ji Yu Wenshan knew that he couldn't help here either. Ling Zhenchuan also nodded, but when passing by David, he whispered in David's ear, Mr. Chen, it's best not to kill people, otherwise it's not easy to handle. As the head of the Wei family, Wei Kunin would not be able to keep the mayor of Ling Zhenchuan if he was killed in Horrendal. Mayor Ling, don't worry, I'm measured. David nodded. Ji Yu Wenshan and Ling Zhenchuan had both left. Wei Kunin looked at David with a strange look. He couldn't see how an ordinary young man David could be so respected by Ling Zhenchuan and Ji Yu Wenshan. My son is your waist. Wei Kunin looked at David and said angrily. That's right, if someone hadn't begged for mercy, your son would be a corpse now. He's a scum, and living is a waste of food. David looked at Wei Kunin calmly, without the slightest fluctuation in his eyes. Good boy, just admit it. After Wei Kunin finished speaking, he looked at a master of the Wei family in a white strong suit. The expert from the Wei family immediately understood what Wei Kunin meant, and smashed David with a punch without warning. This punch, with the sound of breaking the air, is extremely fast. Bang. With a muffled sound, David stood there and didn't move, but the Wei family master who suddenly shot, flew out, and fell heavily to the ground, spitting blood. This time, Wei Kunin was stunned for a moment, and then smiled coldly. It turns out that you are a trainer, no wonder you are so arrogant, but today, even if you are a master, I will seek justice for my son. Wei Kunin took off his coat, revealing his strong muscles. This is to do it himself. Dong dong dong. Suddenly, a burst of hurried footsteps came, and the entire regal restaurant felt a shock. A master of the Wei family looked out through the window, then his expression changed, and he hurriedly walked over to Wei Kunin and whispered a few words in his ear. Wei Kunin frowned and walked to the window to look out. I saw that outside the Regal Hotel, there were densely packed people, there were as many as 1,000 people, and the entire Regal Hotel was surrounded. These people were all armed with weapons. Ha ha ha, Wei Kunin, my people are here, didn't you say I'm not a local snake? Today I'll let you see if I really count. There are thousands of people outside, and only 10 of you will be reincarnated as immortals. Don't even think about leaving. Lin Tianyu knew that his own people had arrived, and suddenly laughed. Wei Kunen's face became extremely ugly, and he stared at Lin Tianyu. He really did not expect that Lin Tianyu could summon thousands of people in such a short period of time, which exceeded his expectations. Wei Kunen didn't know about Lin Tianyu's annexation of the Chelong gang, so he didn't expect that there were so many people under Lin Tianyu. Lin Tianyu, you don't have to be complacent. I can kill everyone in the room before you rush in, and if I die in Horrendal, you will know the consequences. Wei Kunen said with a grim expression. Don't scare me, I'm not scared. It's a big deal to change my life. Lin Tianyu's cheap life, and you Wei Kunen's life, it's worth it. Lin Tianyu followed Wei Kunen to play dumb, not afraid of Wei Kunen's threat at all. This time, Wei Kunen's face became even more difficult to look. Okay, Wei Kunen, confessed today, the green hills will not change and the green water will flow, let's wait and see. Wei Kunen waved his hand and planned to leave with his men. Lin Tianyu directly blocked his way. Lin Tianyu, let them go. David said lightly. Lin Tianyu glanced at David, then moved out of the way and let Wei Kunen lead the people away. If it wasn't for Ling Zhenchuan, David would not have let Wei Kunen go easily. Chapter 297. Master, let's just leave like this, won't we avenge the young master? Walking out of the Regal Hotel, a subordinate asked Wei Kunen. Of course I want to avenge this revenge, but this kid doesn't know what his identity is, and he has so many people in Horrendal to protect him. Since he can't be moved in Horrendal, then wait until Horrendal is out to kill him, and you stay here. Keep an eye on me, as long as he leaves Horrendal, let me know immediately. Wei Kunen said with a grim expression. Understood. Several subordinates nodded. The matter of breaking Wei Tao's leg is over. Wei Kunen didn't come to Horrendal to trouble David, and Yi Fengchen's brothers and sisters didn't come to Horrendal either. I don't know if they haven't heard the news of Yi Fengchen's death, or they didn't plan at all. Avenge Yi Fengchen. David used this spare time to refine Xiaohuan desperately. Under the operation of Reuben, the price of Xiaohuan was rising steadily, and the supply was in short supply. In the middle, David went to Lei Ming Sect to help the Taoist priest's daughter absorb the cold air from her body. Seeing more and more funds in his hand, David felt that it was time to go to Yuncheng to have a look. Maybe he could find some rare medicinal materials from Yuncheng. Because he was unfamiliar with Yuncheng, David decided to let Lin Tianyu go with him. First, there was someone around him who was easy to dispatch, and Lin Tianyu was relatively familiar with Yuncheng. After making up his mind about going to Yuncheng, David went to the Su family to say goodbye to Sonia and Reuben. After all, this trip to Yuncheng would take a while. What, are you going to Yuncheng? Then I'll go with you. When Sonia heard this, she immediately said excitedly. During this time, Sonia also came out of the shadow of kidnapping, and the relationship between the two has grown a lot. Don't go as a girl, maybe going to Yuncheng will be dangerous. David knew that Wei Kunen would not let it go. The reason why there was no movement during this period was simply waiting for an opportunity. I don't care, I'm going. Sonia pouted and started acting like a spoiled brat to David. Reuben smiled slightly and walked away. He was not suitable for watching the two young men fighting. Seeing Sonia's appearance, David smiled helplessly, and could only nod his head in agreement, but thinking about the two of them going together, maybe they could sleep in the same room, maybe they could do something else, David felt a little bit when he thought about it. Excited, with a wretched smile on his face. Sonia watched David sit and smirk, and the smile was very wretched. She stepped forward and knocked on David's head. I tell you, don't think about it, even if we go out, we are still alone in the hotel. One room, don't try to take advantage of me. I think you want to take advantage of me. You want to share a room with me, but I'm not happy. David deliberately didn't care, and got angry with Sonia. You. Sonia was really angry, I'll kill you. The two started fighting, just like a young couple in love. Early the next morning, Lin Tianyu drove, David and Sonia sat in the back row and set off towards Yuncheng. This time in Yuncheng, I will take you to have a good time. I haven't been to Yuncheng for a while. Sonia followed David excitedly. Are you familiar with Yuncheng? David looked at Sonia puzzled. Of course, I lived in Yuncheng for a long time when I was a child. My aunt is from Yuncheng. I often live at my aunt's house, but I haven't been there for many years. Sonia said, her expression suddenly became lonely. Chapter 298. Originally, Sonia's family had a good relationship with her aunt's family. Sonia had lived in Yuncheng since she was a child, but after Sonia's mother passed away, the family moved slowly less often. I don't know what happened to the aunt's family, and my cousin, are they all married? A few traces of worry flashed in Sonia's eyes. Just this time, I went to Yuncheng to see the aunt's family. David looked at Sonia with distress flashing in his eyes. In the eyes of others, Sonia is the daughter of the richest man. She must be very happy living a life of worry-free food and clothing. But only David can understand that Sonia actually yearns for family affection in her heart. She has no mother's love since she was a child, and she has almost no affection at all. Only she and Ruben have been coming here. After the car hurried out of Horrendal, it went directly to the expressway. At this time, behind David's car, a black sedan followed them from Horrendal, and also entered the expressway together. David and the others didn't notice anything strange at all, and no one cared. After all, there were a lot of high-speed cars coming and going, and no one would pay special attention. At this time, Wei Kunin was smoking a cigarette in the provincial capital Wei's house, hundreds of kilometers away, with a gloomy expression on his face. Wei Tao's leg, he spent a lot of money to hire famous doctors, no one can cure it, even foreign experts and scholars have been invited, but there is still no way, the leg bone has been crushed, and there is no way to connect it, unless artificial bones are used. But even with artificial bones, he will not walk like before, and he will still be a lame man. I don't want to be lame, I don't want to be lame. On the bed, Wei Dao roared desperately. During this period of time, he had been looking down on his legs, and he had fallen into a frenzy. Beside the bed, a woman dressed in gorgeous clothes secretly touched her tears. She persuaded Wei Dao while crying, "Xiao Dao, don't worry, we will definitely heal your leg." This woman is Wei Tao's mother Zhang Lanfeng. Yang's family is also a famous family in the provincial capital. Martial arts halls have opened all over the provincial capital. I heard that Zhang Lanfeng's father is a great master, and his strength is unfathomable. This is also the reason why the Wei family has absolute strength in the provincial capital, and no one dares to provoke them. The combination of the Zhang family and the Wei family makes no one dare to provoke these two families in the entire provincial capital. Wei Kunin, you are a FCU king piece of shish. Your son is like this, yet you are indifferent. It's been so many days, where is the murderer? Where is it? Zhang Lanfeng scolded Wei Kunin with his head and face covered. Wei Kunin's face was ashen, but he didn't dare to say a word. Don't look at him showing off his power outside, but when he got home, he was a tiger turned into a cat. He didn't want to become a cat. Quite a few, if there is a fight, he can only be beaten. If you don't have the skills, just give a shish. I will let Xiaoji come over and go directly to Horrendal to catch the guy who beat his son. Look at your useless idiot. The Xiaoji in Zhang Lanfeng's mouth is Wei Tao's uncle Zhang Wenji. There are almost no people in the entire provincial capital who do not know this person. He is known as the provincial capital's little overlord. At this moment, Wei Kunin's cell phone rang, and after Wei Kunin connected, he immediately reported, "Master, that guy named David has left the city, and now he is on the expressway to Yuncheng, and there is no one in the car except him. Besides, there are Sonia and Lin Tianyu." When Wei Kunin heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he gritted his teeth and said, "That's great, let's do it right away, hit them to death for me, and in the end, no matter how dead or alive, bring them back to me." Wei Kunin was full of anger after being scolded by his wife just now, and now he can finally let out his anger. Chapter 299. On the highway, Lin Tianyu was driving attentively. David and Sonia were chatting and laughing at the back, and let Lin Tianyu, who was driving, eat a mouthful of dog food. At this moment, a black car suddenly overtook David's car and drove straight to the front. This black car suddenly started to brake continuously and slowed down. Seeing that Lin Tianyu was about to collide with the car in front, he hurriedly stepped on the brakes. The tires and the ground made a violent friction sound, and the smell of burning rubber spread into the car. The car stopped, and Lin Tianyu swerved abruptly, preparing to bypass the car in front of him and continue driving. At this time, Lin Tianyu seemed to feel the danger. What? The sudden stop made Sonia lean forward and screamed. "Mr. Chen, Miss Su, fasten your seat belts." Lin Tianyu's face became solemn at this time. David also saw that something was wrong, and fastened the seat belt for Sonia himself. After Lin Tianyu bypassed the black car, he suddenly accelerated and rushed forward. And the black sedan followed closely behind, catching up with the car driven by Lin Tianyu. Boom. After a loud bang, David's car suddenly jumped forward, and the entire rear end was dented. Fortunately, Sonia fastened her seat belt, otherwise it would fly out. Lin Tianyu stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, the car made a huge roar, and headed towards Yuncheng. The rear end of the car was dragged to the ground, sending out huge sparks along the way. Come after them, you must hit them to death, or the master won't spare us. In the co-pilot of the black sedan behind, a murderous middle-aged man roared. David, who are these people? Sonia asked with a pale face with fright. David shook his head. He didn't know who it was, but by guessing, it was probably from the Wei family. Lin Tianyu looked at the road attentively, and there was a faint cold sweat on his forehead. At such a speed, if there is a slight mishap, it will be a car crash. Lin Tianyu, slow down at the corner ahead. I want to see who these people are. David's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Mr. Chen, this is too dangerous. Lin Tianyu looked at David through the rearview mirror in surprise. This is on the highway, at such a fast speed, if David gets off the car behind will definitely hit him. I tell you to slow down, you slow down. A flash of irritability flashed in David's eyes. Lin Tianyu didn't dare to speak, and slowed down the speed of the car at the corner. David opened the car door, unbuckled his seat belt, and was ready to jump out of the car. Sonia grabbed David. David, you have to pay attention to safety. David nodded, jumped out of the car directly, and stood up after a few rolls on the ground. And Lin Tianyu didn't stop, just started to slow down, staring at the rearview mirror with a pair of eyes. Sonia also turned her head and looked at David through the rear window. Her hands were tightly clasped together, her palms were sweaty, she was worried about David. Not long after David got out of the car, the black car came quickly. When he saw a pedestrian on the highway, the driver instinctively wanted to dodge. At such a speed, he couldn't see who it was. But just after the black car driver gave a slight direction, David's figure suddenly disappeared in place. Then he appeared at the front of the car, and punched the moving car with a punch. Boom. The huge impact made the car fly directly, and after 2 laps in the sky, it fell heavily to the ground. The car was smashed, the 4 people in the car were trapped inside, and the gasoline in the mailbox kept leaking to the ground. Chapter 300. Seeing this scene, the surprised Lin Tianyu stopped the car, and Sonia also widened her eyes full of incredible. Save me, save me. There were 4 people in the car. At this time, only the middle-aged man in the co-pilot still had a breath and was constantly calling for help. His legs were stuck on the seat and he couldn't move at all. Looking at the constant flow of gasoline, this middle-aged man was scared. David walked towards the middle-aged man and lit a cigarette. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man's pupils suddenly dilated, his eyes were full of horror, he understood what David's cigarette meant. Forgive your life, spare your life. The middle-aged man followed David to beg for mercy. David squatted down slowly and looked at the middle-aged man in front of him with indifference. Who sent you here? The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment, there was a hint of hesitation in his eyes, he didn't dare to betray Wei Kunan, because his family was still in the provincial capital. Seeing the middle-aged man hesitate, David didn't say anything, but just got up and left. Looking at David's back, the middle-aged man gritted his teeth. We are all from the Wei family, Mr. Wei asked us to do this, and I was also forced to help, please let me go, let me go. The middle-aged man shouted at David. David stopped, and there was no expression on his face, because this was all within his expectation, and he had already guessed that Wei Kunan did it. After a few seconds of pause, David walked forward again, throwing the cigarette butt backwards in his hand. The burning cigarette butt hit the gasoline on the ground, and a raging fire ignited in an instant. The shrill roar of the middle-aged man came, and it was very intimidating. David listened to the shrill roar, without a trace of turbulence in his heart. Now he has slowly become bloodthirsty, and he knows that the kindness to the enemy is cruelty to himself. Boom. With a violent explosion, the car was instantly turned into pieces, and several killers sent by the Wei family were left without bones. Drive. David got into the car and said lightly to Lin Tianyu. Lin Tianyu started the car and headed towards Yuncheng here, while Sonia stared at David with a bit of fear on her face. At this time, David had put away the killing intent on his body. Seeing Sonia staring at him, he smiled slightly. I have flowers on my face. Look at me like that. David, did you just get hit by something? How could you knock the car flying? Although Sonia knew that David had some skills, it was a bit beyond her cognition to be able to punch a flying car with one punch. Damn, your husband and I are so brave. When the 2 of us get married, you'll know by then. David smiled at Sonia. Sonia blushed and glared at David. Shameless, who said I married you? A few hours later, the car entered Yuncheng. As soon as I entered Yuncheng, I could smell the strong smell of herbs. There were a lot of herbs hanging on both sides of the road. Maybe the people around were used to it, and there was no reaction. Sonia covered her nose. What kind of smell is this? It's really unpleasant. It's the smell of drying herbs. If you smell it too much, it can strengthen your body. David explained, and he couldn't help but sigh that Yuncheng really deserves its reputation, and it deserves its name as a medicine capital. In Yuncheng, almost every household grows medicinal materials, and it is close to the Taihang Mountains, so there are batches of medicinal herb collectors who go to the mountains to collect herbs all day long for a living. No matter how rare the medicinal materials are, as long as you have money, there is nothing you can't buy in Yuncheng. The traditional medicine stores on both sides of the streets of Yuncheng are next to each other, and almost every one of them has the treasure of the town store. Lin Tianyu, first find a repair shop and simply repair the car, it will be too eye-catching on the road. The rear bumper of the car fell off and was dragged on the ground. David felt that this was too noticeable, so he planned to simply repair it before leaving.